Okay, I want to go over as briefly as I can the importance of having our rib cage aligned over the pelvic bowl. So stacking the ribs over the pelvis. What I mean by this is our front rib cage stacked over the front of the pelvis and the back rib cage stacked over the back of the pelvis. Right? When we have that alignment, we have better access to our deep core canister muscles. We have better access to a nice deep breath, getting that 360-degree movement of the rib cage, and we can move through our bodies with more ease. Now, that sounds wonderful, but we are humans, and so we also have patterns and other structural things and imbalances that show up and create some discourse. Right, so one of the things that we are going to look at is some of these positionings of when our rib cage isn't stacked over the pelvis and how that might affect our ability to take a deep breath, access the deep core, or move freely through our bodies. So what I want to say here is that posture is fluid. It's meant to be moving through space, right? There is no one way is the only way that I have to be when I'm standing and walking, right? We're meant to move, be mobile, and like I said, fluid. Now, with that being said, right, there are positions and postures that help us be more fluid, that help us be more stable, and one of those is getting the rib cage to balance over the pelvis. Now, we are humans, we sit in chairs, we have babies, we play sports, we get injured, we get in accidents, and things shift and change. And so sometimes we end up in structural habitual patterns, and that can influence how we move and live in our bodies. So what I want to go over here in this video is the four kind of most common things that we see. Not to say that there aren't more and they all have their own sort of layering as in each individual, but I'm going to keep this as simple and basic as I can so that we have an understanding of that idea of the ribcage stacking over the pelvis and what might prevent that from happening. So one of the positions is rib positioning. So our ribs can kind of live a little bit forward and flared, right? So if you just allow the front ribs to kind of splay open, right? Maybe you're like, yep, that's me. I live there all the time. Your rib cage, if we were to draw a line, is kind of in front of your pelvis, right? The front ribs is in front of the hips. And then the back ribs are getting a little bit kind of compressed and dense, and it gets a bit tight in that mid to low back. Another positioning, right, not too dissimilar from rib flare, is a strong anterior tilt to the pelvis. And this could look like rib flare until we get the pelvis into its neutral position. So remember, when we want neutral in our pelvis, the pubic bone and those hip points are in the same plane. So in an anterior tilt of the pelvis, those hip points are moving forward and the pubic bone is moving backwards. And again, this can create sort of a compression and darkness and tightness in that lower back, not to mention in the front of the hips as well. So those are two positions in where the rib cage and the pelvis, right, are not stacked, right? The third position is the sort of tucked under, right? We see this a lot with some folks who have hypermobility in knee joints, but also in pregnant ladies, right? Because as the belly grows forward, that pelvis kind of tucks under and it opens a bit because it's a much more stable position. So that's tuck under, kind of a flat butt, maybe a flat back, right? Femurs, tops of the thigh bones jutting forward, right? There's still tension, different, but still tension in the front of the hips, right? And we might have a little bit too much pressure on the lower belly there. But what also happens in that sort of posterior tuck under is the front ribs might compress down as well. And you can see as I'm exaggerating this, right, the shoulders start to come forward, which leads me to the fourth position that we can see is that head forward, shoulders forward position. So maybe this came first, and because the head is forward, the pelvis wants to live underneath the head, it kind of does a little bit of a tuck there, right? So if the head is coming forward and the shoulders are coming forward and the ribs are kind of crashing down, right, we lose that ability to get the movement of the rib cage in the front line of the body, right? So when we are looking for that stacking of the rib cage over the pelvis, we're looking at so that the rib cage can move in all directions, like an umbrella opening out in all directions, right? And then closing as well, right? So those are 4 of like really simple, basic positions, and you can put your body in those positions and see like, oh, I do that already, right? Maybe you do sit at a desk and you know you've got that neck tension, right? How that lengthens those muscles in the upper back. No matter what your habitual position is, right, it will affect our breathing. It will affect our access to the deep core. So I've got some videos after this, if you've kind of are recognizing or identifying with certain positions, of some simple exercises and movements you can do to help start to pull you out of them. All right, so if you have questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.